Dear human, dear soul, I welcome you to my podcast series, Conversations with the Universe. Since a near-death experience, I have the gift to communicate with subtle levels of the cosmos. The knowledge from these for us invisible forms of energy I capture in my books, and it is now a great pleasure for me to share this knowledge, these conversations, with you as a supplement to the books. Please excuse me if the terms and articulations are not perfect. Our mother tongue is German, but we try to translate it to the best of our abilities. Thank you.
My dearest friend and mentor, today I have a somewhat different question, which of course is also related to the subtle. And I would like to ask you what you know, what you have noticed or are noticing was in the Great Pyramids. What happened to the bodies or what was done with them? Or to put it another way, what function do these large pyramids have? In the interplay of soul, body and spirit, our great pyramids. In casting,
I am glad you're asking this question. To grasp the big picture, one must learn to understand the small details.
Well, my friend, this building is small, but not really now. It is one of the largest in the whole world, and it was the largest building on Earth for many hundreds, if not thousands of years. What exactly do you mean by small? I find that kind of funny.
I mean that by understanding such projects, you help on a larger scale, explaining the tools of the cosmos. And that actually includes this object.
Oh, please tell me what you know about it.
As you know, soul and body energetically connected with each other, exchanging with the cosmos through the mind. The soul dwells like the caterpillar in the cocoon of the body, and it needs tools to stretch. On one hand, there's nutrition, which can purify the body and thus transform the mind. And they are the right confidants in your life, so that the thoughts become purer, but they are also the consciousness expanding drugs. Or use different tools like rituals, discussions, other forms of connections among each other and their expressions. The pyramids were created by a civilization, as you would say. They wanted to use additional tools, because all the other tools just mentioned act through the physical, into the physical and through the physical, to liberate the spirit there. But the pyramids you're talking about have enabled the whole thing in a different way, thus allowing for purer and even clearer sensations.
Carry on. Please continue reporting.
All the power of a soul is bound in the body through the different layers of aura. One can only stretch these aura layers in the body or move the mind, but never intentionally completely disconnect the soul. As long as the soul is anchored in the body, it acts in the body. And through physical sensation, organic, hormonal, and other gland functions always influence with the filter, which represents the whole construct. Thus a pure perception of the universe is impossible. Yes, unfortunately, the civilization at that time was aware of this issue, that no rituals or herbs or whatever could actually make it possible to be freed, to be a physical perception, and thus created these tools with immense effort. But they knew why. After all, these machines became the gate into their wholeness and thus power.
Wow! So you're saying that through the experiences with the pyramids, people could actually remove the soul from the body. and thus have naturally perceived themselves very clearly and much more purely who they are and what they are. With this consciously made experience, they then returned to the body and thus could, obviously a different, so more conscious, more self-confident life. Exactly so it is.
Wow.
This reminder of the other form of being,
which is present in you every day, I mean the soul. People were reminded of their full potential within themselves through this.
wow. So that's why they call it a sort of initiation that people have gone through.
That's the way it is.
Was the subtle I completely separated from the body, separated by the construction of the pyramid?
Yes.
Really, completely? Wasn't there something about this silver cord that people always talk about on the body?
Upstairs.
Really, totally. Wow. And then those souls were drawn back into the body.
Exactly.
But what ensured that they found their way back into the body? I mean, on the other side, if you will. It is so beautiful that you actually forget everything around you. I know what I'm talking about. At least when you're in the brighter realms, then you might not even want to come back.
Yes, maybe. But this possibility is also a possibility when people performed this exercise back then. Thus, by the power of their free will, they were naturally also given the option to decide not to come to him anymore, not to go back. And that was and always will be value-free. However, those who wanted to return, he made it. And aware curiosity.
Wow, we're getting closer to the whole thing now. The myth about the pyramids tells of a tomb, ultimately, but it was only for some a place of transition who actually died there, thus into the... In this world here they have died. For others, though, it was a place of rebirth, you could say.
It is...
How does that work? Do you have a few physical details?
Yes.
Please. When the body lays in such energies, so begins a process of detachment. I'd like to elaborate a bit, give some background information first. Can you describe what exactly the potential of the pyramid is, to begin with? I mean, it's a material form, but still somehow causes an effect on the body. Can you describe a bit better in your words what it does?
Yes, of course.
Bitter.
About the positioning of the place in the pyramid, in which the connection cradle is located. All cosmic possible forces, as well as all subtle energies, are thus focused, that it guides the free will of the person who lies in this cradle, that a detachment from the body is possible. I'll try to describe it a bit differently. The Earth's magnetic field is thus channeled, and in a certain way cancelled out. The subtle energies are thus channeled, and in a certain way so dull realized. And the cosmic energies of the universe around you will be channeled and bundled, that they also perform liberating forces. That all this together forms a triad of forces, which is the law of the anchorage of the soul ever stronger into the body, can be lifted when the intention is clearly formulated and the will is pure. Thus, in this state, a kind of transformation of the physical frequencies begins.
Look, a transformation of physical frequencies. And what exactly does that mean now?
When the body is brought to such a frequency, it's actually like a kind of mini death. The body functions are reduced, as you would say, so small that a certain type of stillness of body functions occurs. Of course, the heart continues to beat and pumps the blood, but the mind is calm. The brain can sleep. And it is precisely in this moment that the soul can move and bloom. I'm not a physicist and not a doctor either, but I know physical functions can be induced into a state that is just barely lifelike, and thereby enables all of this in the first place.
So we have an interplay of various forces, which are probably quite powerful individually, yes, and then allow the body to become relatively still, by which the soul can start to move again.
Yes, but please do not forget, it's not just physical silence. You have that at night when you sleep very deeply. It is also the influence of other forces that are concentrated here. And then it results in the soul becoming very aware of itself, having formulated and carried the intention beforehand. She then begins the journey out of the body. All of this then happens at the speed of light, so very quickly. Why not, like with a normal death, so very slowly? Because it's different. Because other forces are at work, my dear. The, as you put it, normal transition happens under normal circumstances. And that's why the slow detachment from the body is just right. And a natural process. But there in the pyramid, in the holy chamber, very strong energies act that accelerate this. And that is a good thing. Because no one really intended to undergo the detachment or incarnation process for weeks or days on end. It had to overcome slowness and in a certain way carry much more acceleration within itself, also to ward off other influences.
Wow! I guess if I'd heard about these processes, I've heard those were always multi-day rituals, multi-day processes. It was never the case that you just went there for an hour, did the work that was handed down, and then just walked out again. It was already longer processes. But, what do you mean by that now? What do you know about it?
I'm also aware of such processes over several days, as exploring the cosmos comes with various tasks and challenges. They all must be overcome. And even though shedding and reincarnating happen quickly, it still requires a certain amount of time. Yes, necessary, it's better.
Okay, so people went in there, laid down in the cradle. They probably talked about certain preparation rituals beforehand to clarify their intentions. What exactly they want to experience now, where they wanted to go, and so on, and then it started.
Yes, then it started.
What exactly were those tests you just mentioned that occur in this process? What tasks and trials do you mean?
If the soul still bore traces of impurity. So these were their greatest challenges in their process of realization.
For where there is pollution, there is a distortion of perception, as you know.
This means that quite a few people did not perceive the cosmos or themselves very clearly. Instead, they might have lingered in the waiting area, or in another state of perception, which could not convey knowledge to them, or even caused confusion. Therefore, it was always very important for these people to carry clear concentration and intention within themselves, and to not stray from the path.
So no matter how big the impurity in someone was and appeared, one should feel as in a dream in which one tells oneself, hello, 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 I'm just dreaming of remembering what and where one wanted to go, right?
Yes.
Exciting. That sounds like an incredibly beautiful tool, which ultimately also signifies a kind of cleansing, carries within itself.
Could be right.
Because when people learn about their impurities in this way, so first of all, they become aware of their emotional impurities and thereby naturally, of course, could also be cleaned up, so cleaned. Then they came back completely cleansed in the end. It's like, I'm saving myself a further 120,000 incarnations and can then immediately enter a very clear spiritual state. Walk into with even more conscious potential. Reincarnate again. So, roam the cosmos, walk my path clearer and more consciously than ever before. That's quite the shortcut. Yes, exactly. That was the motivation too.
And to create objects so large and elaborate allowed the creators of these objects knew about this very potential. It is a kind of shortcut to the higher levels.
Wow, do you know what, friends Native Americans? If I had the money, I would have recreated something like that. So much avoidance of suffering would be possible, ultimately possible with it. Every incarnation does indeed pose a kind of risk, that one does not become aware of oneself, but simply stumbles through the whole incarnation and maybe even along many other incarnations. It can take forever until one eventually reaches consciousness. And then you need to know the right tools to clean. That can take forever too until you find them, or then you forget them again, and who knows what else. Is this tool, this pyramid, this machine, therefore has a abbreviation created, which I find magnificent, and I am, to be honest, speechless, and can totally understand the use of matter to implement this shortcut.
You use strange words, dear. What is a true commitment?
Cost of goods sold is, well, material input. I mean, cost of goods sold because that's what we call it in our economy.
Wouldn't it then be more appropriate to use material?
Of course. I've just now taken real commitment. Sorry, that's my human perception.
I understand.
Okay, so this kind of consecration was a kind of crooked crowning of the soul's journey. Can you say it like that?
If you want to see it that way, yes, by all means.
Well, it is indeed a royal road. For those who have travelled it have reborn their soul in its full potential, only this time in reverse, consciously using your whole body, not like an infant. He can then do fantastic things for the rest of his life because he has been initiated and experienced, recognized and purified. That means king's tobacco for me, sort of. Were there even 3 different pyramids? Was that for practice? I mean, were the others there for practice?
Exactly.
Why 3? I mean, we've talked about so many levels in the ascent. Why didn't they build a pyramid for each level?
Because it wasn't about the planes, darling.
Jerk?
It was about the slow experience of detachment in a conscious state.
But why 3? Can you explain that?
I don't know directly, my dear. I've just had various conversations and communications with other entities who have had this experience.
Would you like to tell me about it? I mean, you've already emphasized that these aren't your experiences.
Yes, it's just important to me that we clearly emphasize. When I report and when I just share knowledge from others.
Yes, of course.
What I experienced was the first. The smaller pyramid was there to bring the body into a vibration field in which he could already experience unconsciousness. But detaching from physical functions wasn't possible yet. Just unconsciousness. Let's say people were brought there to dream in a different way. The body remained alive, fully functional, and the soul within it. Everything that was experienced there was purely energetic, like a dream.
And what was practiced in the second pyramid?
In the second, that is, the middle pyramid, the detachment of the spirit was practiced slowly by experiencing several different connections. The energy wheels, your chakras, were balanced there and lifted to a higher vibration.
This actually means that the soul has been slowly activated, right?
Yes, through various exercises. The respective energy wheels were gradually perceived, and only through the connection of all meditative. And then in the Great Pyramid, in the very Great Pyramid, the final level was then completed. The complete decoupling of the body and the full awareness of the soul is achieved. Have you been able to find out if statistically more people left because of it, whether most return or not? Yes, as far as I could observe from my perspective, more people were devoted to the transition as the experience of returning. Then more people died or were grilled there.
As those who have come back.
Yes, re-entering the body was the hardest test, and very seldom possible. But it was possible, and these people were truly enlightened, knowledgeable, very wise people.
Wow, I'd honestly like to know if these people, once they've come back to the body with such awareness, this kind of high vibration could have inherited too. That's quite a special kind of energy in the cells with wings. And we know that such energies and experiences that can store in the cells and thus may ultimately let inherit. Do you know about that?
Yes.
And
living a conscious connection to the cosmic levels was reproduction. No more options.
oh, but my question was whether it could be passed on further.
Yes. It would be hereditary. To actually connect such high vibrating frequencies together, it would create different genetic potentials, and that's what I really want to say with this. These returned conscious, enlightened people were no longer associated with physical perception.
But they continued to perceive their soul frequency more clearly. Yes, but we are all bodies, aren't we? I mean, you can't completely ignore these bodily functions. And that includes the drive to reproduce. Yet, yes. Wait a minute. If they have turned off the reproductive instinct, did they then stop eating and live on light? No. I know all about
Conscious.
nutrition.
Pure light nourishment was not the option, as it was not fully satisfying.
There are also stories of people who had such experiences and vibrated energetically very high but still reproduced. Could it be that their energy levels dropped again afterwards?
Yes.
Oh, you see, then that's true.
Yes. How should I describe it? You have already used the term high vibrational. I am happy to pick up on this. You really need to picture this as if the soul were filled with 1,000-fold energy, and it vibrates through the body. Physical functions are now used only for steering the body, but the driver is. And that's the crucial impulse. Only the soul, very consciously, very purely, very strongly the soul. And if this is strongly pronounced, It redirects these physical functions differently. Do you understand me?
Yes, I understand you. If this soul energy is really strong, then comes the need for reproduction. For example, not at all. By the way, it's interesting that apparently to reach this state, the so-called chastity has also been introduced in our churches and monasteries and so on, right? Yes, an attempt that just can't work at all. Well, if someone who is or was vibrating so highly still experienced physicality, then it caught him in his consciousness, thus back into his physicality, into his physical perception. Picked up, if one can say so, and thereby, again, out of the spiritual perception, so that the awareness with it was almost destroyed again,
Yes,
right?
and if one wishes to phrase it differently, one could also say, through the physical perception, the emotional whole was once again enriched.
Oh man, there we have that word contamination again. It really sounds like being in a church and working with all those prohibitions again. I don't actually want that.
I'm just stating a fact, darling. Don't take it that way.
Yes. But there are so many prohibitions in church, and I find it terribly distorting when you reach a point, at which point it becomes understandable that one should not do this or that on this path of spiritual growth. Then one can actually almost agree to such regulatory values, or
Sylvia,
they deserve it.
Sylvia, please, not really, please, do not use such comparisons. My impulses, all our impulses, are exclusively loving, mindful and non-judgmental. To confuse this with the bans from the institutions, or even to lean on them, it's not really correct, dear.
Yes, okay. I think that the people who underwent such an initiation back then, or who they surely knew what they were getting into when they left,
Yes,
right?
of course.
They knew that if they really embarked on this journey, there was the risk on one hand that they would stay over there on the other side, meaning the body dies. Or that when they return, they simply want to live without any passion or physical pleasure.
That's the way it is.
And they were okay with that, huh?
That's how it is.
Okay, then ultimately no one was forced.
Thank you, Sylvia. Very nice that you mentioned that again. Because that's exactly the key point. Nobody was forced. Self-responsibility and free will were the tools of these decisions.
Okay. As we know, there are different power potentials in these souls. Are the people who performed this ritual, as I call it now, everyone at their physical peak, comeback of cosmic potential power, or does everyone just have their power and potential, their maximum potential, were and then lived?
Lovely question, darling. Thank you for that. Of course, everyone has recognized and rekindled their best potential. No one could significantly increase the soul power beyond this potential through this experience. One of your poets said, "You are in the end what you are." Just realizing the actual potential meant a lot of power already.
So I would have thought that one could actually also increase the soul power in these things.
No. Because that's a completely different process, love. This machine, this tool, was not there to boost spirit. It was there to become aware of the actual soul power in the first place. And then, if desired, to come back into the body and then to live with this awareness, choosing another form of being, connected with reality. in one's own personal, purest form with the cosmos.
Okay, and where then would growth be possible?
In this being, in this new being. So one thing was the activation. Life itself then became the opportunity for growth, as you know.
True, that makes sense. It wouldn't quite be right if someone just boosted their power potential through such a machine and then somehow became the king of all energies. But no experience is gained.
That's exactly
at
how
all.
it is, Sylvia, exactly. It must go along with the world of experience. Knowledge on the material level is what makes you grow. Grows the most.
So returned to the body back then. And one probably acted as some sort of priest or high priestly being on earth. Was a further increase in effort then possible over this creation?
But yes.
Perhaps also through rituals or something of the sort.
Of course, about all the possibilities that fate offers one. The giving, the teaching, gratitude, the joy. So many tools that fate offers to man. Then to expand his soul's power and grow.
You put that nicely, explained it well, thank you very much. Say, do you know of people who might have gone in there 2 or 3 times? Really, I mean, if someone has done it once, then they could go in there again. Why not?
Because the risk of no longer finding the way into the body was always very high. And once this path was taken, let humility and gratitude prevail. Now acting with this potential in life.
Oh, come on. There must be people who have done that twice or something. Perhaps died only on the 2nd attempt.
Oh, Sylvia, I do not know, my
But
dear.
from your knowledge or your understanding, you know it was really only meant for one time, right?
Yes, exactly. Okay. An initiation into the cosmos. And when you are initiated, Sylvia, what do you eat then? Then you're initiated. There's nothing more to initiate again. Thank you. You've made me laugh.
Yes. But I mean, if someone, for instance, has energetically fallen again due to a mistake and is once more tainted in their spiritual perception, then he surely must have taken another shot at it.
And another one. And another one. And another one. Yes, that might be the case. But the still very pure souls did not go back in, Sylvia. More is not always more. Or, at least I am not aware of such experiments. But whoever was impure had to walk this path once more.
You
yes,
see, that
course.
Sounds pretty complicated.
And dangerous.
Well, why dangerous? You say it yourself, it's neutral. If the person when someone moves on to the afterlife, they do so without much value.
Yes. But if the person carrying the contamination bears, now aware of himself and this responsibility, it can also cause a detachment of the soul part. Why? Because the soul vibrates so highly that the contamination through the physical creates a divergence, a dissonance. And as we have learned, this can lead to divisions.
Oh, that's terrible, friends. It's madness, the responsibility they had when they went this way. So they could never experience physical pleasure or reproduction again. That was a very big responsibility.
Yes, of course. Everything is a great responsibility, my love. But those who have experienced such things, they were wise not to venture into it a second time. and would not expose themselves to the risk of energy parts splitting off.
Were there people back then who told you that?
Oh yes, of course.
Where has this knowledge gone? What happened?
Due to the impurities of human souls, envy and jealousy grew bigger and bigger. Love. Others wanted to make these experiences too, and they abused it. Gradually, more and more people died there. More and more people. And so it became a burial site. The conscious priests became fewer and fewer. I cannot tell this story now, but such a case of knowledge has indeed occurred. Why in detail we should discuss another time. Intriguing. When I chat with you right here, I'm moving my spirit. So I stretch my soul and speak from consciousness to consciousness with you.
It's a different state, isn't it?
Correct.
The state I was in during my near-death experience should actually correspond to this. Well, these spiritual aspects. Getting a bit closer to a pyramid state, right?
Absolutely, Sylvia.
So are all near-death experiences something like what was experienced there?
No, not everyone, dear. Even this is as diverse as the colours of your world. It's about the body's frequency, and especially the souls in this state of near death. Your soul inherently carries a very high frequency. And so you came back to your home plane very quickly and directly, experiencing communication there. Others still perceive their body for a long time before they perceive anything else, and so on and so forth. But all of this doesn't really have anything to do with the pyramid experience. In this form, you can imagine it, because you have so consciously experienced the other levels through your near death. But this doesn't happen to everyone. That's why we can't apply this generalization here. However, it still applies to you.
Too bad. It would actually be cool if something like that still existed in our world. If one could simply lie there and then experience something like that.
Would you really want to experience something like that? With the price that you won't perceive your body the way you do now.
Good question. I believe if people continue to make me sad because they are so terribly disrespectful and evil, then I might get to the point where I say, you know what? Let's drop it now. Even if there's a risk that I leave completely, and when I come back, then only as a helping priestess. Let's put it this way. I'm not at that point yet, but I can envision that it might exist. However, this doesn't mean it has to exist.
Anyway, believe me, the decision of those who did this back then, that was not an easy decision. They really had to say goodbye to everything worldly. And this was not just a cliche as you might imagine. It was truly life-changing and profound.
But why did they do that in the first place? I mean, I think this is a really, really wonderful story and a wonderful thing, but what was the actual intention of those involved? Those who created it?
Well, they wanted to keep the connection to the cosmos, making knowledge permeable and accessible to everyone. The people who had passed this test had successfully completed it, were ambassadors of the heavens, messenger of the gods, ambassadors of the cosmos. Call it what you will. They were, in any case, those who saw the other side, walked in her, and communicated with her, or even continue to do so. Direct ambassadors of the divine. What more do you want if you aim to lead people in the most positive way like this.
That's true. Correct. You're right. These are those who now wear these white robes in Rome, really just likenesses of them. Those who have absolutely nothing to do with it, let alone live any connection to the cosmos.
It is.
So that was more or less the church back then, and those were the trials to truly be able to help people as a priest. I think it's a great story, a really great thing, fantastic. It's a shame they're not around anymore, honestly, but oh well, things change. One might almost think that people back then, if they had such priests, generally happier, more joyful, more luminous, and definitely more loving, a completely different civilization. At least to me, that's the logical conclusion. That's how it is. Do you know about the great pyramids of Giza? The replacement, the separation of the soul from the body was made. Information on why this pyramid was designed with 3 distinct areas. One deep in the earth, one in the middle, and one in the middle.
I have gained the following insights. In the lower belly there is the chamber, steered by worldly powers, that brings the body more into its strength. In a way, it's like an invigoration of human cells, would you say? Do you understand? It's the gathering of strength for the body. Moreover, there is in the room above, further towards the top. There the mental aspects were connected, but still linked to the body. Similar to the lower chamber, where the body was animated. The upper chamber is thus a kind of soul animation. There are also other rooms where this could be practiced. Ultimately powerful to accomplish the actual separation was then only the middle one, because there the energies all bundled together in the right measure.
You said that those who have returned to the body are then called enlightened masters. Let's call them priests, or so for the people of their time. Can you tell us what kind of messages and teachings you gave the people back then in a practical way?
They were connected to the cosmos, each in their own way the mouthpiece of the ethereal worlds. All impulses, all actions, everything they caused was thus like the long arm of the cosmos, true representatives of the subtle worlds. Which questions they answered exactly, and which impulses they gave individually, is not relevant. They were there for the people, for all who sought them out, and they lived this knowledge within themselves. Can you follow that?
Yes, I follow that, but I'm imagining a ritual where many of the followers also came to these enlightened ones. Was there something like a kind of telepathic transmission then? Could these people participate in this field of consciousness that the enlightened ones might have carried within them?
A beautiful question, but no. They sought them out for acknowledgement of their sufferings and affirmation of their desires and solutions.
That reminds me a bit of what the people in white robes introduced in Rome. It's called a confessional. People go to church, meet a priest, separated by a wall there, and they talk about their suffering, their desires, and he gives them impulses. Is it something like that, perhaps?
Distage. Yes, only this distorting wall in between is incomprehensible.
When a soul has returned to the body after the detachment ritual in the pyramid, and then having very high vibrating energies within, these enlightened priests then had a longer lifespan than the average person.
Yes.
Oh, do you happen to know how long they could live? I mean, in terms of years.
If I could, it's so hard to measure by your time. I only know that they had a very youthful aura, and that for a very long time. Dear friend, do you have anything else you'd like to share with me on this topic?
Okay, it was a very exciting journey, and once again I learned a lot and understood a lot about how everything interacts, and how exciting the cosmos really is, and what many, many possibilities it offers. Thank you very much. Love.